The first morning after Baltimore took her back from the streets, Adobe opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling, unsure if she was still dreaming. The sheets were white, clean, software. The scent of fresh linen wrapped around her like a hug she hadn't felt in years. No rats scurrying, no cold bricks under her back, no hunger pinching her ribs. She sat up slowly, confused, and then she saw her reflection, a full-length mirror at the end of the room. For a moment she froze. She didn't recognize the woman staring back at her. Her hair, once matted and stiff, had been washed and combed into thick, soft curls. Her skin, dull and ashy just days ago, was clean, warm, glowing faintly. The oversized silk robe hugged her like it belonged to her body. Her eyes, still tired, still wounded, but alive again. A knock came gently at the door. A young woman entered, tall, confident, American Nigerian, in a crisp uniform. "Good morning, ma'am. Mr. Tunde said to let you know breakfast is ready, and the stylist will arrive in an hour. Your doctor's appointment is at 3. Adobe blinked. Doctor? Stylist? Wait, her voice cracked. All this is for me? The woman smiled. Yes, ma'am. Everything. He said to tell you, you deserve to feel human again. Adobe looked away quickly, pressing her fingers to her lips as tears welled in her eyes. She hadn't cried in front of anyone in years. The first time Adaobi stood under a hot shower in Tunde's penthouse, she cried. Not because of pain, but because for the first time in years, the water was warm enough to sting and safe enough to feel like love. She let it run over her body until the mirror fogged and her fingers wrinkled. She touched her own arms with care, as if introducing herself to a body she had forgotten belonged to her. I'm still here, she whispered. That night, wrapped in a clean robe and soft cotton slippers, she sat on the edge of the bed in a guest room that smelled of lavender and lemon polish. Her old notebook, the one she had carried from Maryland to that alley in Baltimore, lay open in her lap. The pages were smudged, tear-stained, but filled with dreams. Brand names, ingredient lists, skincare routines, sketches of jars and labels with the name Glow Niga printed in bold, confident letters. She stared at those dreams, and for the first time in a long time, she believed in them again. Tunde didn't hover. He checked in. He made space. He treated her like someone who deserved respect, not rescue. There was a personal doctor who visited twice a week, a therapist, a quiet female driver who took her to appointments. No press, no attention, just kindness. The therapist sessions were awkward at first. Do you want to talk about what happened? No. Do you want to talk about how you feel? I don't know how I feel. But slowly, one word at a time, Adaobi began to open. She spoke of the lies Auntie Clara told her to get her to Maryland, the 3 years she was treated like furniture, the basement where she slept near a leaking boiler, the night she was kicked out with no shoes, the fear that followed her everywhere, the memory of herself shrinking, smaller each day. And the therapist, always calm, always gentle, would say, you didn't deserve any of that. And surviving it doesn't make you weak. It makes you miraculous. Each morning, Adaobi stood in front of the bathroom mirror and whispered something different. Day 1, you are not a ghost. Day 3, you are not a maid. You are not a burden. Day 5, your body is not shameful. Day 10, your silence was survival. Day 14, you are allowed to be seen. Day 21, you are a woman, not someone's tool, not someone's secret, a whole woman. She began taking walks in the nearby park. She began journaling again. She began smiling sometimes when she looked at her reflection. And slowly her posture changed. She no longer hunched inward. She sat tall, crossed her legs with ease, and spoke with a voice that didn't apologize for existing. It was a quiet Sunday when Tunde invited her to a small art exhibit in downtown Baltimore. Nothing flashy, just culture, just color. She wore a black turtleneck and simple jeans, her hair braided into neat cornrows that framed her glowing face. No loud makeup, no attention-seeking accessories. And yet, when she entered the gallery, heads turned. She wasn't loud. She didn't demand the room. She simply owned her space. Tunde, watching her from across the room, smiled. Not because she looked beautiful, though she did, but because she finally saw it too. One night, Tunde found her in the kitchen at 2 a.m., hunched over her notebook, furiously sketching. "What are you working on?" he asked. She held up the page, her newest formulation idea, a full skincare line made for women like her. Women with scars, women with melanin, women who had been forgotten and were now returning to the light. "Glow Niga," she said with fire in her voice, "natural, rooted, proud." Tunde nodded. "You're not healing anymore," he said. She looked at him. "No," she replied, "I'm preparing." The day the green dress arrived was the first time she looked at herself and smiled. A Lagos-based designer, one of Tunde's contacts, had flown into Baltimore with 4 options. But when she saw the emerald gown, she knew it was the one. It shimmered like hope dipped in royalty. When she stepped out of the dressing room, Tunde looked up, and his breath caught. "You," he said, eyes wide. "You look—" She raised a brow, daring him to finish. "Like something that could stop time," he said. Adaobi turned to the mirror, and this time she saw herself not as a survivor, but as a woman reborn. It was a calm evening in Baltimore. Outside, the wind whispered through the skyline, and the distant hum of city life moved on without care. But inside Tunde's penthouse, warm, modern, and lined with glass walls, war was being declared over wine and quiet rage. Adaobi sat curled on a gray velvet couch in a silk robe, her skin newly radiant from a facial she hadn't been able to afford in years. Her feet were tucked under her as she clutched a warm mug of ginger tea, the faint steam drifting toward the ceiling. Tunde stood by the fire, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a wine glass. He hadn't said much since the envelope landed on his kitchen counter earlier that day. The wedding invitation, glossy, gold-lettered, so confident in its mockery it may as well have come with a wink. He stared into the fire for a long time before finally turning to her. "I want to go," he said. Adaobi didn't respond right away. She already knew what he was talking about. "Seye and Kunle's wedding?" she asked quietly, her voice like warm silk hiding a blade. He nodded. "I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to fight. But I'm not going to stay silent either." Adaobi watched him for a moment. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed the storm beneath. She had seen that look before, in her own reflection, the first time she realized no one was coming to save her. She took a slow sip of tea. "Good," she said finally, "because I have no interest in silence." Tunde turned toward her. "I want you to come with me." She looked up. "I want you standing beside me," he said, "not just to prove something to them, but to remind me of who I am now, and who I will never be again." Adaobi placed her cup on the table and leaned forward. "I'm not a prop, Tunde," she said softly but firmly. "I know. I won't be your revenge dress. You won't. I want a seat at the table. I want them to choke on every bite they take while I sit there glowing with everything they thought I could never become." Tunde stepped closer, lips twitching into a faint smile. "That's exactly why I want you there." She nodded slowly. "Then let's plan this right." The next day, the penthouse became a war room, not of anger, not of violence, but of intelligence, elegance, and evidence. Tunde pulled up files from the cloud. documents he had archived from his company before he left Nigeria. With Adaobi's help, he began to piece together the full scope of Kunle's fraud. Emails, signed contracts, fake vendors, shell company listings, bank transfers, and something even more powerful, witnesses. Adaobi remembered people, a former cleaner at the 6th office, an intern who left without notice, a contract staffer Kunle fired when she asked too many questions. Tunda reached out, discreetly, respectfully, and one by one, people began sending statements, old files, and proof. Meanwhile, Adaobi worked on her appearance, not vanity, but armor. She wasn't going to walk into that wedding as the former housegirl, or the homeless woman from the alley. She was going to walk in as power-cloaked in grace. A stylist from Lagos was flown in. Designers were consulted. Her emerald green gown was tailored to her exact shape. Bold, daring, queenly. A custom pair of heels was designed to match. Her nails were done in gold foil acrylic. Her hair was styled in a regal updo with tiny diamond pins placed like stars. Tunda, on the other hand, updated his lawyer in Nigeria. "I want a full report ready to file the Monday after the wedding," he said, quietly, without press, "until I say so." "And what about revenge?" the lawyer asked. "This isn't revenge," Tunda said. "It's closure, with teeth." The living room was dimly lit, except for the soft glow of the fireplace and the cool bluish hue coming from the flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. Tunde's penthouse felt more like a command center now than a home. Maps, digital presentations, files, and notes covered every surface. In the center of it all, a sleek silver laptop sat open, a folder displayed on screen. Operation Elegance. Adaobi leaned forward on the sofa, her emerald press-on nails tapping against the glass coffee table as she scrolled through the contents with a calm, calculating eye. Screenshot of financial theft, voice recordings, shell company links, photo evidence of a hidden property in Dubai, receipts, dozens of them. It wasn't just a case, it wasn't even a revenge file. It was a weapon of truth, and it was ready. Tunde emerged from the adjoining hallway, freshly showered, dressed in a plain black turtleneck and gray joggers. His feet were bare, but his posture was firm, like a soldier waiting for deployment. He handed Adaobi a glass of wine and sat beside her. "Everything's aligned," he said. She nodded. "We walk in, we smile, we greet. No drama, no threats, just presence." Tunde glanced at the TV screen now showing a paused slideshow preview. The exact evidence they planned to cue mid-wedding. "You still want to go through with it?" he asked her softly, not as a test, but as a courtesy. Adaobi turned toward him. "I'm not the same woman who slept on pavement, Tunde," she said, "and this version of me doesn't flinch." He looked at her for a long moment. The transformation was still unbelievable, even to him. Not just her physical glow-up, but her composure. The way she now carried pain like a weapon forged into a crown. They walked to the far end of the living room, where Tunde had positioned 2 dining chairs and a standing mirror. "Let's rehearse the walk-in," he said. Adaobi raised a brow, amused. "You're really doing this like a mission, aren't you?" "This is a mission," he replied. "Not of revenge, but of legacy. They need to remember how it felt when the people they erased walked back in, glowing." He held out his arm. She slid hers through it. Together they paced the floor like a red carpet. Not too fast, not too proud, just controlled. Royal. Tunde turned slightly toward her. "You'll wear the green dress. Emerald silk with the thigh slit. Good. And you?" He smirked. "Simple black agbada. No embroidery, just class, just presence." They stopped in front of the mirror. They looked at their reflections. A pair no one in Lagos would expect. A woman who'd once been discarded. A man who'd once been betrayed. Both reborn. both regal. Adaobi tilted her chin slightly. "Do we toast first or last?" she asked. Tunda smiled faintly. "They'll ask me to speak. Kunle's pride will demand it. And when you do, you'll keep it calm." "I'll keep it lethal," he replied. She laughed, a rich, elegant laugh, then turned to the slideshow controls on the table. "What about the projection? Who's managing it?" "My guy in Lagos, the DJ. He'll have it cued discreetly. I say the code phrase, he hits play." Adaobi nodded. "What's the phrase?" Tunda looked at her. "Karma never forgets an address." Adaobi's smile vanished. She looked at him, eyes shining now, not from fear, but from conviction. "They buried us, Tundi. They thought that was the end. But it was only the seed." Later that night, Adaobi sat at the vanity, doing her skincare routine as Tunde read through a list of VIP guests attending the wedding. Senator Yusuf, the Nollywood twins, a Glow executive. The press might be there too, he noted. "Good," she replied. "Let them all see it." He looked at her through the mirror. "What happens after this?" She paused, dotted serum on her cheek. "We build. You scale Move Africa. I launch Glow Niga. We rise. No looking back?" She shook her head. "No apologies, no regrets, just altitude." Before they went to bed, they stood at the edge of the balcony, overlooking the Baltimore skyline. The stars blinked above. The air was sharp. Tundi slipped his hand into hers. "When we walk into that hall," he said, "we are not guests. We are a mirror. And they'll finally see what they did to themselves," she finished. He turned to her gently. "Let's give them something they'll never forget." Adaobi squeezed his hand. "We already are." The Rolls-Royce arrived at BWI Airport in the soft blush of dawn. Tunda stepped out first, dressed in a cashmere blazer over a white tee and dark jeans. Beside him, Adaobi exited with a quiet grace that turned heads. A caramel trench coat flowing behind her, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, and a silk headscarf wrapped elegantly over her braided hair. A driver in uniform pulled out their luggage. 2 sleek black suitcases, nothing flashy. No logos. Just quiet wealth. They didn't need to announce themselves. Their posture did that for them. As they entered the airport's private terminal, the staff snapped into quiet attention. "Mr. Alabi, welcome back. Your jet is fueled and ready." Adaobi glanced at him. "You booked a private jet?" He shrugged. "I'm not walking into Lagos through Murtala in a queue. Not for this." She smirked. "Good." The jet's interior was cream leather and champagne lighting. A bottle of Veuve Clicquot sat on the table beside a silver tray of strawberries and plantain chips. Windows framed the rising sun as the jet taxied down the runway. Tunda sat by the window, flipping through files on his iPad. Adaobi reclined across from him, sipping sparkling water and scrolling through her mood board for Glow Niga's future Instagram page. Soft skin tones, bold packaging, African names in gold leaf fonts. "Everything ready?" he asked. "The dress is in Lagos already. Delivered to the hotel. Stylist arrives the morning of." "And the speech?" She raised her brow. "I'm not giving a speech," she said. "I'm delivering a truth bomb." Tunda chuckled. "I'll try to leave some pieces of them intact." "I won't," Adaobi said, and smiled sweetly. Somewhere over the Atlantic, Tunde leaned back and stared out the window. He thought of the first time he left Nigeria, how it felt like defeat, like exile, like shame wrapped in airport security checks and fake smiles. This time, he wasn't fleeing. This time, he was returning rebuilt. Next to him, Adaobi pulled her journal out of her bag, the same battered one she'd carried since Maryland. The cover was now rewrapped in leather. Inside were pages of product formulations, business strategy, taglines, and a new logo she'd sketched by hand. Glow Niga. Bold, rooted, radiant. She glanced at Tunda. He was watching her. "What?" she asked softly. I still remember you. In that alley. She said nothing. And now look at you. Adaobi closed the journal and met his gaze. I'm not her anymore. She was the seed. I'm the bloom. He nodded. You ready to face them? Adaobi leaned back in her seat, pulled off her sunglasses and looked him straight in the eye. I'm not going to Lagos to face them. I'm going there to bury who they thought I was. The seatbelt signs blinked on as the jet began its slow descent into Murtala Muhammad International Airport. The sky outside had darkened to a soft orange hue. Lagos at dusk, alive and burning beneath the clouds like it had been waiting for their return. Tunda stared out the window, his jaw tight. He had flown this route before, many times, but this felt different. His fingers gripped the armrest, not in fear, but in remembrance. He saw the city below, sprawling, messy, proud. The same city that gave him dreams, the same city that took them away. But this time, he wasn't returning empty. He wasn't the man fleeing scandal. He wasn't the forgotten founder or the ex-lover. He was the storm in designer wear. Beside him, Adaobi reached for her purse and pulled out a slim black makeup bag. She opened a tiny mirror and touched up her lip gloss. Just a light dab, nude with gold shimmer. No dramatics, just precision. Landing in Lagos, she whispered. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were fire. Tunda turned toward her. How does it feel? She looked down at the city again, at the lights beginning to flicker to life, at the chaos that always buzzed beneath the surface. Like standing on the grave of the version of me they buried, she said. He nodded slowly. Adaobi didn't hate Lagos, not anymore, but she never forgot. She never forgot how they ignored her in the reception area when she worked at Kunle's company. How they called her small girl while she fetched coffee and photocopied Betrayal. How she disappeared into a foreign alley and no one ever checked. Now her return came on a private jet with $1 million man beside her and a plan stitched into the hem of her emerald dress. The flight attendant appeared with 2 flutes of chilled sparkling water garnished with mint. We'll be on the ground in 7 minutes, Mr. Adaobi, she said politely. Your vehicle is confirmed. The tarmac team will escort you directly from the runway. Thank you, he said without looking up. Adaobi took the drink with a soft nod. She stared at the bubbles rising to the surface. Tunde, she said, still watching the fizz. What if they try to spin it? What if they deny it all? Tunde tilted his head. Then we let the proof speak. We don't scream. We don't chase. We show them the mirror, and we let their own faces shame them. Adaobi smiled faintly. Mirror revenge. I like that. The wheels kissed the runway with a whisper. No thud, no bounce. Just a smooth, controlled descent. Exactly how they planned their comeback. The cabin lights brightened. The hum of the engine shifted as the jet slowed to a roll. Outside, a private tarmac team waited. Black SUVs, dark shades, everything in place. As the stairs lowered, Adaobi reached for her sunglasses and slid them on slowly. Tunde stood first and offered her his hand, not just as a gesture of help, but as an unspoken vow. You are no longer alone. She took it. Together they descended the stairs, step by step, into the heavy Lagos heat. But this time, the sweat didn't stick to her skin like shame. This time it felt like home rising to meet her with a bow. Tunde inhaled deeply. Smell that? He said. Exhaust and ego, Adaobi replied. He laughed. They reached the car door. As it opened, she glanced back at the runway, just once, then slid into the cool leather interior of the black Range Rover. The doors shut. Lagos was loud again. Honking in the distance, police sirens, a generator humming somewhere far off. Tunde looked at her. This is it. Adaobi stared forward through the tinted window. Let's go remind them who we are. When the plane wheels touched Lagos soil, neither of them flinched. Outside, the private black Range Rover was already waiting. Tundi helped Adaobi down the stairs. The wind hit her face. Warm, familiar, but different now. Lagos looked the same, but she was not. As they stepped into the vehicle, Tunde leaned toward her. Tomorrow, they'll see us. Adaobi looked ahead through the tinted window, the city rising before them like a memory on fire. Tomorrow, she said, they'll remember us forever. The wedding of Seyi Adebayo and Kunle Adeyemi was not just a celebration. It was a spectacle, held in one of the most exclusive event halls on Banana Island, Lagos. The venue was a cathedral of luxury. Massive crystal chandeliers sparkled like frozen fireworks overhead. Marble floors glowed under soft uplights. Thousands of white orchids cascaded down golden pillars. An 8-tiered cake, decorated with edible diamonds, stood like a tower in the center of the hall. And at the far end, the couple's throne, lavish, oversized chairs embroidered with their initials in gold thread. It was a wedding designed not for love, but for legacy. Nollywood celebrities posed near the entrance. Politicians chuckled over aged whiskey. Entrepreneurs, influencers, and oil magnates networked between courses of lobster, jollof risotto, and imported champagne. And yet, despite all the glitter, the real moment was yet to come.